Yes, thank you. So we're at the final session, and I just wanted to comment. You look like a boy band at the moment. Going to the uplifting chorus. But first thing to say, I don't know about you all, but I've had a really interesting, stimulating day. I think it's been brilliantly programmed by Andrew. Just to say a big. Hosting this, because I think it's been really rich and optimistic whilst being pragmatic about the challenges. And in the panel session, what I thought we could do, yes, we're a panel, but actually this is about having a conversation. So I'm going to ask a question to us all and probably get our panellists to talk about it, but also I want to hear from you. So the question is to all of us. It struck me, just listening to you all and the artists talking about your work, we're navigating change, and we know we're in this period of change, and we know that some things might be right, some things might be wrong. What do we think the collective challenges are? What do we think the individual challenges are to us? And what from today did we think might have got a bit resolved through some of the conversation today? So from your perspectives, what do you think your personal challenges are?
Raising bigger budgets, sort of $500,000, $750,000.
Right. And where to get that from? And did you feel that from what was talked about this afternoon with Indiegogo, did you feel that kind of steered you in the direction you
It's edging towards it, I think, but I think it's still a question that's avoided, is that, you know, for a film to be distributed on a sort of on a global scale, there has to be a lot of production value, and production value costs money, generally. If you're kind of trying to compete with cinemas and things like that, you need big production values, and that costs a lot of dough. So I'm not saying it's not possible to raise the money, but that's the step, is where you get in from the low end, 50 grand, 75 grand, to $500,000, $750,000, and get it out there.
Is Indiegogo quite successful for that kind of budget as well?
In America, last year there were 2 films on Indiegogo that raised over $2 million. I think there was one on Kickstarter. There was a kind of reason for them. One of them was a very, very big web series in America, and what the equivalent would be here. But then there was a very interesting one called Gosnell, the movie, that raised, I think, $2.5 million. And funny enough, when I first got to Indiegogo and I was looking at all the campaigns, I was like, why did they get $2.5 million? It's just so weird. They were I had remembered they'd made a documentary that was at Sundance, but it didn't immediately strike me as something that the world would come and fund. And it was actually about this awful guy called Dr. Gosnell. I don't really want to talk about the story because it's horrific, but he's the biggest serial killer in the world because he was an abortionist and had killed a lot of babies that were past the date of being babies. So what happened, apparently, I don't know loads about it, this is just the sort of top line of the story, is that the pro-lifers in America got into the debate, and it was like, prove to everybody that it was, that abortionists became serial killers, and it was all kind of linked. And so that was a very big, I mean, it's an interesting case because it caught a political debate in America. So I'm sure it was about the filmmakers, it's been great too, but I think that was, there was something in there. But I think that money is possible, but it's in America. I think those levels, but it sits, that's why it's all such a parallel model to distribution, because if you're a UK filmmaker, you need your film to work in America to even think about getting it. We're just not big enough. If you're just releasing in the UK and a few countries across Europe, you're never going to get a huge profit. And those numbers are just the same with businesses online, crowdfunding. If you come up with an online business, the first thing an investor will say is, right, when are we rolling out to America? It's not where the money is. But it's interesting because it opens up that shop to be sitting here, like the documentary I was talking about. They're Brighton based, and he opened up and got $50,000, 98% of that from America. And I think that's the brilliance of going global on the internet.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It was a technology podcast. It wasn't about film, but it was quite interesting because he was saying that investors, a lot of investors now, investors in tech, won't even come near you unless you've kickstarted your product to begin with, because it's such an easy thing to do. It's such an easy way of doing it. Why wouldn't you have tried to kickstart before you've approached an investor? But also, again,
Crowdfunded it.
Crowdfunding, sorry. I'm using his words, I'm quoting him.
Indiegogo did.
Indiegogo, yes. Why haven't you know, if you've not invested in Indiegogo, if you've not bothered to, because once you've Indiegogoed something, which is the verb now, you know your audience is there. And I just kind of found that quite an interesting point that investors are thinking that way.
Well, and talk about the moving models. There's a big thing in the industry at the moment about, and it's particularly with the indies, because I think if you have got a film that's got Benedict Cumberbatch, you actually do need a distributor, and they can get you the money and they can get you the pre-sales. I think mainly this services the indie filmmaker that can no longer play in cinemas. It's brilliant, it's award-winning, it's dark, and nobody's going to go and play it in the cinema. And I think that replaces the model. I was going to say something that completely went out of my head. You said something. Oh, that's great, isn't it? Sorry about that.
People investing without having done the crowdfunding.
Oh yeah, so I was in Berlin, and the wheels are changing, and a team of filmmakers came to me, and they had been sent to me by their sales agents, and it was like, woohoo, because the sales agent said, you know what, this is a small indie film, it's kind of cool, you've made it, but you need, you know, if you crowdfund, it's free marketing. It's, you know, if you can make it work. But then you have to be genuine, because I think you are out to a crowd. So I really hope films don't come in and sabotage that element of it, because I think it's incredibly, there's a really genuine side, I think, about the crowd, empowerment, and I don't want that bastardised. I think the film industry also mustn't do that. But I think, again, you're not just asking people to lend you a tenner. If you are going to do that with a bigger film, you know, give them some signed merchandise from the director that they would never have had the opportunity to get. I was talking about Iron Sky earlier that got $600,000 from a bunch of filmmakers in Finland, and they've been working that crowd now for 3 years. They're probably the best crowdfunders in the world. And it's what's their second film about, Iron Sky Becoming Race? It's Hitler on a dinosaur. It's kind of crazy B-movie stuff, but they know how to do it. They've totally worked the sci-fi audience. They go to the comic cons, the sci-fi heads, and we were just saying and they're not lazy in what they do. They think, how can we interact? How can we get people to engage with us? And so I see lots of film campaigns who go, be an extra for a day, £300. Okay, Iron Sky's version of that. Come and be Lizard Man in scene 16 and get your makeup done for the day. And there was another perk which was get eaten by a dinosaur for $1,200. And then when that sold out, they put the next one up, which was get eaten by a dinosaur in close-up for $2,500. That sold within a day. I mean, that is fucking genius. And also as a film producer, we used to have to pay for extras, and these people are paying for themselves. But what a brilliant birthday present for your husband who's a, you know, geeky comic head. Oh, you're going to be eaten by a dinosaur. Happy birthday. So it's not just begging for money. I kind of hate hearing that as well, because if you're a smart campaign and you're integrating it with marketing and audience building, and it's also not just I want more money. It's incorporating all of it, building an audience, and how you can, if you get the email of that person's coming pre-buy your DVD, you know, what can you ask them to do 18 months down the line? Quite a lot, actually. You can email them, we're releasing on VOD today, take a photo of something, post it up, tell everybody we're releasing. You've got 3,000 people you inherited on your crowdfunding campaign who are now singing and dancing for you 18 months down the line when you need a bit of help with distribution.
You can ask people for a favour, or you can ask them to join you in your mission.
Yeah.
And joining you in your mission is completely different. It sounds a lot more exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're a stakeholder then.
Yes.
And then they've got a stake. You wanted to, this conversation leads naturally, and I think what we're picking up on here is, we listen to brands and, large brands in the industry, and actually I think they're struggling a little bit with this, because you talked about the authenticity of the ask and the realness of these environments coming through. And I wondered whether we could talk about the strengths of the independents, and as much as there's the challenges, how can we turn those into opportunities? And I think last February, the presentation you gave earlier sort of shone a light on that. But I wanted to take that further and open that up. Well, what we see are the strengths of the independent sector here in this space. Silence. Silence. Do we think we have strengths? Yes.
I've got a question, I'm sorry, it's not relevant to this, but I've got to go in a few minutes.
No problem. Don't worry.
Any of you have been involved in anything that's been specifically aimed at the Asian market? Because a lot of this has been kind of Anglo-Saxon centric, and obviously Europe, it's part of it. But have you been involved in anything that's specifically been aimed at the sort of Asian market, or have you had any, what's your response from the Asian market, from China, from Japan, from Korea especially? Have you had any good experiences, or have you sort of tried for those markets specifically? Because obviously there's a big area there, and it didn't seem to be being addressed on what we mentioned earlier.
The Indiegogo, it has crowdfunded games, films in Japan, Korea, yes, tech. It's very big on the tech side.
Have you had any experience on those?
Me personally, no, because I've been there for 6 months and I've been working with UK and US filmmakers mainly. But yes, if you look on the platform and you go country by country, you'll see the films that have been down there. And also, one came up last week. It got $30,000. It was from Russia. Brilliant. They just pop up. We've got one from Poland at the moment. It's on $25,000 and it hasn't hit the 7th day yet. So it's, but all of that is about people who know how to do it. They're working it. They're using social media. I've also had really big kind of BAFTA-winning filmmakers. They kind of get it all wrong. They think they're above all of that. They can do it without a Facebook page. It doesn't work for them. You just see, you've got to work it. You can't. There are no exceptions in that online space.
I think that's something that people don't talk about that much. Is when they talk about Indiegogo doing something, no one talks about the hard work that has to go into it. You can testify. When you do it, it's really hard work. You've got to be prepared to put the legwork in and the effort. Because you get found out really quickly. Exactly,
but you see in film, you have to do it nowadays anyway. So I also look at producers who are like, oh, I've got to do a Facebook page. It's like, you've got to do a Facebook page anyway, and you should be doing your Facebook page while you're in development meetings and getting people really excited about things that are coming out, and you're creatively in your story, and even if you don't crowdfund, but it's why do you think you're going to get through this and be making a £300,000 film and you're going to be okay without a Facebook page?
We're translating the entire works of Shakespeare into Mandarin, so we're going to be there. And we have absolutely no doubt that we'll have to look at the culture, and so we're looking at Weibo, we're looking at the online social networking sites which are different, and you do that accordingly. But I think that it's on all of it, whether it's Anglo-Saxon, whether it's different parts of the world, we're still tribal, and we have to understand when we say it's for everyone, actually, that's a really hard thing. And actually, getting that.
Because behaviours are different in different cultures.
It's a beauty about global crowdfunding. I mean, I was with some kids the other day who had invented the Pi Raspberry, which is this little development kind of. It looks like a laptop, but in fact, you pull back the keyboard, and it's a little development kit for 14-year-olds to learn how to code and develop. And I think they were $269, and they were ones that kind of broke out. They were raising £50,000, and they ended up with about £400,000. Everybody went ballistic and pre-ordered this thing, and he showed me his dashboard, and went, oh, there was somebody in the Maldives bought this yesterday. And that is brilliant. He's sitting in Shoreditch, and somebody heard about this on social media and picked up one of his Pi Raspberries for £250 or whatever in the Maldives.
It's just that I think that you would have to have a different strategy in some of these indexes. Because, you know, we're all about standing out, and they're not, they're all about fitting in. And so, I was just wondering if you had any experience of that, because I think employee different strategies, I think.
Every show is a different strategy, everything.
Yeah.
You get universals, you get, you know, certain things, but if you're looking at, so if you look at it in a traditional sense in terms of promoting your work, what does that, what is it about that piece of work that speaks to people will always be different, otherwise we're homogenising our offer.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Can we, hello? Yes.
I wanted to ask you something about the application that you presented us. It was Karen, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We were discussing about that. It's a really good development of Siri, I can say, because it might be inspired by Siri, like, but it's much better, much more interactive, and it's better to see someone on the camera. But I don't know. It is an amazing technological development, but I felt sad because technology is about enhancing the communication between people. But that didn't happen because if you have someone and you talk to someone in the phone, which is not real, it's really sad because your whole life goes around this. And even if you go in Kickstarter, we saw a comment that says, so Karen is single? There was someone asking if Karen is single. It's not even a real person. Well, it is. It obviously is. But through your phone, it's not a real person. It's an application where you interact with it. And since you've talked about this, you talk about fundraising, you talk about other stuff, but you didn't mention any ethical issues that this might have.
Yeah, that's a fair point. There are a lot of ethical issues and kind of around any of our work that we do. So I think the point of it is that it's not necessarily like Siri, and I think that kind of things like that and her is one of the things that people make an obvious comparison with. And I think it's that thing of having something that you naturally try and compare it to something. It's more of looking at a new way digital storytelling is something that kind of reacts to you. So that's kind of more the area that we were interested in, seeing how you can create a personalised experience. And that was part of the reason when I mentioned about the video initially when we edited it, is because some of the pics that we used, or some of the clips, sorry, did make it feel like a bit sexist, and I think that's some people's responses to it in that field. And it's helped us frame it, because in no way does the story come off like that. That is not part of the story. She's not your girlfriend. And it's very much something that is set up to go to kind of both kind of sexes in it as well, so it's not in that way. And I've lost what your question was.
Well, you know, art is not, it's not a crime. Like any form of art is art. It's not a crime. But there's always dangers. Even in movies, I mean, if you open a movie, it says PG-13.
Yeah.
Or like it's the same if you buy medicine. You go to your pharmacist, and he won't give you a strong medicine, but he will give you like anadine, which are like painkillers, because it's a simple drug and it's not going to cause you anything unless you took everything.
Yeah.
You take all the painkillers, and I believe it's especially for these kind of applications because they involve many ethics in it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot.
It has to be mentioned a lot because some people don't really understand reality from virtual. They cannot separate.
Definitely. I think there's there's a lot of ethics around it, and especially kind of around the data usage as well is kind of another big area for it. And so we do quite a lot, sort of try and be as open as we can with that sort of thing, and to have information there that's there for people. And to a certain extent, you just can't design for complete extreme reactions and things. But I think it's also trusting audiences. And I think, I think to kind of be really resilient to try and dumb down people who think they wouldn't be able to do it. I think there's some people that wouldn't be able to draw that line, but I think to trust your audiences, and I kind of feel as an audience member of other things, I'd want that kind of trust back as well.
Any more questions?
I just can't pick up on last year. I mean, I was looking at the final thing about how much you made out of it, which was like 3,500, considering. I thought, is this really worth it? And then I listened to you saying you were going to do it anyway for some project, because it actually gave you a broader, it wasn't just about the money.
Yeah, I think, that would kind of be the net profit if we put in staff time for it. But I think it was so much more than just the money, and I think part of it was having something that we worked on for that amount of time. and seeing who's interested in it and bringing people on that journey. Like I think having people in that creative process and building that audience around it, people that would be kind of in it now and we're about to launch the app, it will come back into that story and people are helping us beta test it and user test it. It just kind of grows that audience and it grows the creative process. It's nice having people that come into it in that way with something where it is kind of developed at one end. It's nice to actually bring people in part of that journey.
And your last slide was your last slide was great, which said, we didn't make much money, but we did this, we got that,
yeah,
we got
exactly.
that. Which is why we do these things. You don't always make things for money. You make things because they're interesting, because of new challenges that you want to understand. And when you start to understand these new challenges, it puts you in a really good position. It puts you, in a position where you can help other people. So, yeah, that was a great slide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine. Regarding crowdfunding, I've a bit limited my knowledge of that. Are you guys putting in a wage when you're looking for your funding, or is it purely, or are you allowed to? Or are you literally looking at, it's going to cost me, X amount to go and shoot this or make this, or are you taking a wage, I guess?
No, so I mean, the way that we fund things anyway is kind of putting money against people's staff time. But for this one in particular, because the developer that we worked with on it wasn't part of our core team, we kind of basically went from a $100 grand budget that we initially had to a 15 grand thing where it was like, what is the minimum development time we can pay for that doesn't include any of our costs or any partner costs that would make this app, would make it a good experience still, so something that would still be worth doing. And that was kind of part of that cost, so it didn't cover, everything at all. But for us to do it, we were like, we need to have something in, and that was what we felt we could go for with it. And I think, I think you actually put costs in. I think there's nothing, like all for covering your staff costs, you should as a company. But I think it's looking at kind of what the level is that's reasonable to ask for and what it is that you kind of want to get that money for. And I think you have to just explain to people, I think, which is hopefully what came across in the video, is that it was all the development time that we needed the funding for.
So it is actually allowed then?
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Yeah, it's. I mean, when we were just having this conversation earlier, when you sort of crowdfund for £30,000 plus, you're into a bit of a production. You've probably got some merchandise and some T-shirts in there, and in America they call it perks fulfillment, and some of that is made much easier in America because companies are setting up around the new industry of crowdfunding. So, for example, Indiegogo works for a company in the States called Amplifier, and if you're doing a $50,000 crowdfunding campaign, Amplifier will make your merch and your T-shirts and your DVD, whatever you want posted out, and you pay them X amount of money, and they do the posting too. And so in America it's very facilitated, and the costs are, I mean, if you hit your goal on Indiegogo, we're 4%. You're probably looking at, I'd probably for safety put in another 4% for PayPal and bank payments and charges. Then, when people run campaigns sort of £25,000 and over, the way you would look at it is you would think, okay, we're going to run this for 4 weeks, which we sometimes advise because it's just make it 4 weeks, prepare for it, and then go for it all guns blazing. And in that team, it's like a production office. You might need a campaign organizer who you pay. You may then get some apprentices and film students who come in. Great, they're all in their early 20s. They're going to be brilliant on your social media, so I highly advise that. And it's a little bit like running a production office, actually. And I've been putting some people into campaigns because I often have a producer going, who am I going to get to run this? Because I can't do this. And actually somebody who I've just set up with a big doc in Brighton, I knew he was working as a production assistant for one of the TV companies here, and I contacted him, and and he's worked for a short. So it's kind of about managing your thing. If the campaigns that are sort of £100,000 plus, some of them look between 30 and 40% of that will be the costs of your merchandise making, getting a campaign organizer, and those payments and things. So and what we ask for that level of campaigns is that you come up with a pie chart, and then there's a transparency to that, so that the person who is funding your cat cafe, which we have at the moment. They've just put their pie chart up. They know now that 40% of the pound they put in has to go to the campaign, and it's just, you've got to be transparent all the way through. And remember postage and packaging, because that always gets people.
Yeah, that's just pretty hard.
Yeah, that was just the rewards, I think, mostly for it. And postage packaging, I think that's the thing that shocked us, is that it just didn't twig that the money that you're raising includes that postage, that you're having a £15 reward that has £3 postage, and that £18 goes towards that big pot.
It's the realism of it, isn't it?
Yeah, the budget's really important to work out. Yeah. And what you said about the digital perks, it costs you nothing.
Yeah.
It's the thank you, and I always say on films, great, put 400 people on there as thank you credit. Everybody's left the cinema anyway. But thank everybody, and also it is celebrate a crowd. I always have, there's one film that I can't say what it is, but it was thinking of a really big crowdfunding campaign, and it was just like, and it was significant to an animal, and it was kind of like, get everybody who has one of those animals, get them all to, if they want to pay £500, they can be in the last scene, and everybody walks into this scene, and then there was a football film, and it was like, ask everybody, pay £100 and you get in the seminal crowd scene in the football film. Yeah, it just works with the story, and I think those are really successful. You sort of brainstorm as if you're probably brainstorming one of Hugh's campaigns, and yeah.
So there's a guy called Frank, and Frank is this really brilliant digital artist who in 2002 was doing, he did something called The Show, whereby every day for a year he'd make a very short show, for about 4-minute show, and he put it on the internet. This is kind of like, he was quite groundbreaking, because this is pre-YouTube, so it kind of went on his website, and he was really brilliant at doing crowd ideas. So you may have seen some of his stuff. He would do things like, he would challenge all his fans, or sports racers as he called them, to make an earth sandwich. And an earth sandwich is, he'd say, right, you get a piece of bread, you get a bit of filling, you stick it on the ground, you find someone who lives, take a photograph of it, find someone who lives on the direct polar opposite of the world to you, get them to do the same, and then you put both the sandwiches photos together. He did this thing which has been stolen and ripped off many, many times, called Young Me Now Me, which is get a photograph of yourself when you were a child and recreate that photograph now and put them side by side. There's probably some versions of that. But he did, he Indiegogo'd something with a different company about 2 years ago. And his rewards were, they were brilliant, they were really smart. Go and have a look at his campaign and look at the note, because he probably did about 150 different rewards and things like that. And some of them were really smart, and like, for $99 as a joke, most of them were just jokes actually, but for $99 he kind of said, send me your shoes and I'll walk in them for a day.
Where is this guy?
Say that again?
Where is he?
Zay Frank, Google him, Zay Frank, Indiegogo using another company name, and you'll find him. So basically he made a film of him walking in another man's shoes. And it was great because he'd just come back from the post office, picked them up, he's filming himself, he pulls over in the car, puts his shoes on, he starts walking, and he starts telling the story of the guy who sent him the shoes. And the guy sent him the shoes says, hi Zay, I used to walk in my shoes for a day, they're my favourite pair of trainers. I loved your show, I loved the show when you had it all those years where you used to listen all the time. But around about that time, a really strange thing happened to me. I started to get this pain in my leg. And I went to the doctors and they realised I had a tumour. And then I realised that I was never going to be able to walk again. And I had these pair of shoes on, they were my favourite pair of shoes. And then about 4 or 5 years later, I had another operation, and I started to get feeling back in my feet. I started to practice walking, with help, and then eventually, after years and years, I can walk proper again. And they were my favourite pair of trainers. I wore those trainers every day since that very day that it happened. But unfortunately, the company have stopped making these trainers. These are the very last pair of trainers that I've got, and I'm sending them to you to walk in them. And it was just a brilliant, brilliant reward that he put out on the internet, got shared, that brings a heap load of more attention to his campaign. And, that's what you can do with your rewards. Be really, really smart. You know,
Yeah.
the example of,
Creative.
you know, do you want to be eaten by a dinosaur? Send me your shoes. You know, just
Yeah.
the ripple effect can be really incredible if you think of really smart rewards.
Yeah.
It's a long way of answering the question. I think.
No, it's brilliant. It strikes me as think about what you could do, not what you should do, and you know, ideas. Do you mind
Yeah,
just
of
going in the middle before? Can I take your question?
From me? So, sorry, like finding somebody else. I've loved hearing all the stuff about crowdfunding and digital storytelling. One of the things you guys have given us a lot of ideas about doing some interesting digital storytelling. I work for a visual arts gallery. We have a big collection. We want to put that collection online, but we can't afford to. So there's a lot of stuff I want to do to kind of do that. But is there anything you recommend not doing in terms of kind of pitfalls for, you know, in terms of digital storytelling that you kind of think?
God, there must be so many.
Yeah.
There must be so many, surely. They're really just like
Denial at the back of our brains.
Well, you know, like
Some moment.
Well, the first thing is don't underestimate the size of your task. Secondly, a big pitfall is putting a request out there and assuming it will happen, because it won't. You know, if you were to crowdsource everyone taking photographs and uploading them to your site, and just saying that and thinking it will happen, it won't. A hell of a lot of work goes into that, and engaging with the audience and encouraging them. They will do it. You can get audiences to do amazing things for you online, but it doesn't just happen. And I think that's what everyone's mistake was when the internet kind of started to get exciting. I remember going to a conference in, I can't remember what it was, there was a guy making the first crowdsourced film, and I was making a film at exactly the same time for the BBC, and I was listening to him talking about his film, and it really kind of made me rethink how I was making a film. I completely changed the way. Because basically he was just doing this, send us everything, send us all your things, and I'll piece them all together and I'll make this film. I knew, because I worked for the BBC, I had a bigger megaphone to do this, and if I just put that call out, I would have so much content to go through. This guy had the opposite problem. He didn't really have a megaphone. I could read between the lines of how he was talking, and I got a sense that his project was falling to pieces because he assumed that everyone would send in clips, everyone would do this, everyone would do that, and it wasn't until we got into the questions and answers and I started to pick his brain a little bit that I could see that he was really, really struggling. So to avoid that nightmare, what I did was basically it was a film that was shot entirely on mobile phones at a time when mobile phones were crap. And basically what I did was I went to Nokia and said, can you give me some phones? And gave me like a bag full of phones. And I went to festivals, and instead of asking people to send their stuff in, which I kind of did do a little bit, but I was very careful about how I did that, I just went around, found interesting people, and asked them to film their stuff. I gave them my email address, or if they didn't have a phone with them, I gave them a phone. So I crowdsourced, but in a kind of quite selective way, because it needed to be manageable, because there was only me working on this project, and I had the opposite problems what this guy had. So it's really, really thinking about the content that you want and how you can get that the way that is workable for you.
Yeah, we had, in fact, Kirsty touched upon it when she said you hadn't quite understood what the Kickstarter guy had said, but you had done the 30%. So we've done a lot of research at Indiegogo, and a few things are really important of things to sort of think about. First of all, to get what you want to raise, get that figure right. So in crowdfunding, you never want to be doing this, you want to be doing that. And the minute you find yourself doing that, people will come and look at you and, oh, I don't know, you're part of that. Total psychology of crowdfunders. It's all about being a wave that, we're going to make this. And the minute, you can tell when you sort of get on somebody's page, they've been seem to be going for 2 weeks and they're at 4%. I think I want to join this lot. And you kind of jump off again. So what we do, I don't know if this is directly answering the question, but I wanted to sort of bring this to the theory of how it works. Is that you so say you want to crowdfund for £10,000, 30% of that, let's say for argument, that's £3,000. So you need to sit with your team. So if it's a film, there's you, probably the producer, the writer, the director, it could be the DOP, get everybody, get a team together. We really want to do this because this is the film that everybody's going to work on. How you need to try and bring in that 30% before you go out to the crowd, which we call a live launch. So you pull back for about 4 days, and actually we don't show people drafts. You go live, but you don't tell anybody. So those, let's say you've got 6 people in that team, you sit there and think, right, do each of us know, which you touched upon, 50 people to do Dear Bob emails, Dear Mum, Dad, Bob, sister, brother. You know, this is a labour of love, we've been doing it for years, but actually I'm not just asking to borrow a tenner. Look at our perks, there's some lovely things that you can get involved, and perhaps actually that's at a point when you're raising a bit bigger funds. So we have a film funding at the moment, and I know they have an investor who I know knows lots of bankers. So, put some stuff in there that's £5,000–10,000 on your feature film, because if you can get his mates to come in, make sure there's something there for that kind of a person that can pick up a £10,000 or £5,000 investment. But going back to the £10,000 film, when you hit that 30% in those 3 to 4 days, you then go, we're now going live. It's Monday morning and we're going to go live. So you go out on your Facebook, your Twitter, and you're now going out to the crowdfunding community, theoretically. You've still got your fan base in your Twitter and your Facebook. The idea is that when they then come onto the platform, woo, you're at 3,000, looking good, we're going to join you. As opposed to you've come onto that and there's £800 sitting in there. I'm telling you, Bob, who you don't know, will jump off that platform. We've got all the figures and the research. So the other things we do to back that up is called an amplification stage. So we have algorithms that are set at Indiegogo at 30%. So your baseball card, which is the photograph of your campaign, clicks up to the top of the site. The global platforms. The idea is we're trying to get the crowdfunders globally to catch you when you're 30% and you're going up. And that's called the go-go factor. I said that with straight face. And then you're in amplification, and we've got other things that you should do with the amplification stage. But that is our sort of real base of campaigns. And every time people think they're better than that and they're not going to do that, as big as they are as indie filmmakers, I watch these campaigns stuttering around the £4,500 mark, and you're just thinking, why did you just, instead of making your goal 50,000, why didn't you just ask for 15? And then what you want to do is when you get 15 and actually suddenly everybody's realised this is worth 50 and it's great, you do the outstretch, and then you go, you know what, actually we need another 10, and this is what we're going to do for that. And you can get very creative again in the story of that. So there was a very funny film about how to plan an orgy in a small town, and they were so creative. Their pitch film is hysterical. It's them persuading an actress to be in it, and that she's like, so what's the plot? And they're like, well, you need to be in an orgy. She's like, what? And anyway, it immediately makes you know they're going to make a funny film. And then the director says, you know what, if we hit $100,000, I am taking my kit off, and so is my production team, but they don't know it. And we're going to run around the corner and we're going to be filmed. And they hit 100,000 and they take their kit off and they get another $30,000. And that's brilliant because that's what you call an outstretch. And if they'd gone for 150,000, it would have been misjudged. And so another thing we take really seriously of time we put into your campaign is we look at all your resources, your support, your social media. So you've got to get that number right. And if you don't, that's probably your #1 disaster with a crowdfunding campaign.
Strategize for a series of spikes rather than one big spike at the beginning. There's nothing, like you were saying, there's nothing worse. I've seen it for years and years where people launch a campaign and they get this spike of attention at the beginning, which is fantastic. There's nothing better, there's no greater feeling than watching those numbers go up. It's incredible. And the next day the numbers aren't quite as good, and the day after no one is looking. And you've not strategized, you've not thought about it, you've just assumed that because things are going well day one, they go well day 2, day. So really thinking about your campaign and how do you piece together a series of strikes. or tell a longer story.
We have a new question.
What a new question.
Hello, hi. I was just wondering, I'm getting together an Indiegogo campaign.
Oh, sorry, I can see you. I was like looking at live. I don't know who's saying this.
I've done a couple of them already, so
great.
yeah, so I've kind of got a bit of experience. But I was just wondering.
Is this film? Are you a producer?
Yeah, I'm a producer.
Filmmaker.
Yeah.
Great. Is this shorts or features?
I've done 2 shorts, and I'm doing a feature now. But what we're doing is and this is another question I wanted to ask you at some point. But we're raising money through the SEIS scheme. But we are thinking of doing one iconic scene in the Natural History Museum that we're going to be filming and crowdfund for that.
Great idea. It's a great idea. Specific elements and scenes, and yeah, that's brilliant.
Cool. And then all the stuff you guys have been saying, I'm thinking all the kind of cool perks that I can come up with specific to that scene. So yes, I thought that was great.
And actually, Crystal, the movie, the one that I was talking about, that was over 2 million. I had our founder at Indiegogo talking about it the other day, and because I wasn't around when it crowdfunded, so I don't know all the details of it. But he said that one of the bits of it was crowdfunding the movie poster for the film, and paying for the billboard in this particular place in Los Angeles for the poster to go up. So people would kind of, I guess, when the film came out, go, "I did that. I got that poster up on that billboard and helped them."
So my question is, in terms of timing your crowdfunding campaign, is it bad to do it like right around the Easter holidays? Does that come into play?
No, it's good. I mean, I would actually say March the 1st onwards, January and February has been really tough. And I've seen both our figures and Kickstarter's figures, and it's just, and actually I saw my sister's shop's figures, and they're pretty similar. And everything it's now hotting up. I've got lots of films launching in March, and so they kind of say the dead zone is Christmas, so a lot of campaigns end on the 23rd of December. I think Easter is, it's Friday and Monday, it's not a big thing.
Everyone's away on holiday and I'm going to lose out on that. Okay, cool.
One thing that we found was timing. We knew much more about that, but we launched ours, I think it was at 5 o'clock in the evening, I think, so that when it finished at a similar time, so you kind of drive people. Just trying to get an idea of where your audiences are internationally as well, and what time zone that would be for them. So I think we launched it on Tuesday. I thought it was Tuesday, Wednesday. For some reason, it was supposed to be better. I can't remember why.
And actually, on that note, currency is quite interesting. So if you, my friend who did the documentary, who's from Brighton. He did know that there was a big American audience. The subject of his film had been interviewed by Oprah, and so he crowdfunded in dollars, because for the Americans are really where the money is, and if there is at least if there's a sort of 50-50 on UK, US, who you think are going to be interested in the subject of that film or what this is, you go for dollars, because a US person doesn't like looking at that and thinking, I'll go for UK. But I mean, we've got all the conversion rates, and you can make it look much more transparent, but it's like if somebody in Europe is launching and they've got a big US audience, I don't think the US person is going to particularly enjoy pressing euro on a PayPal. But did you take my card?
No, I haven't, but I'll give you.
Let's have a conversation about it.
Question.
So all this information and advice about what to do with a campaign, and where do you get it? Is it if you sign up with one of these crowdfunding organisations, do you get the advice, or is it something you have to buy into, or is it?
No, I mean, if you go on our website, it's all there. It's called the Filmmaker's Handbook or Playbook, and just go. It's a blog, and there's a 10-page book. You've got all the links, and it's all there.
But if you, can you buy intellectual services with the organisations?
No.
So it's something you have to do yourself, basically, and
we did
work it all out.
We did a lot of this with ours. We did spent a lot of time running on research for it. And so we've got a guide as well that is kind of all of our experiences and extra things, which is competing guides, but it's on our website. But that was because we were looking to be able to have funding to actually do that research and try and put it in a way that it saves you doing a lot of that as well. So it's on the Glastonbury website, I'm kind of going to do it. But if there's stuff on there that you want to know, like, we can happily advise on certain things as well. Kind of see it feels a shame to have done all that and to be able to.
Yeah. We were talking about it earlier, but there are now companies that if it is a substantial campaign, you hire them to be your campaign organiser. So Space Boy is the one I use a lot, which is the Iron Sky team, and their campaign organiser lives in London. So you know, we've just launched a big cafe with a novelist, and she's the campaign organiser on that. So because this author, there's no way he would be able to run a £125,000 campaign single-handedly. So he's taken a bit of the budget to pay her to run it, and they're kind of verified. And there are independent people around. It's becoming a job, actually. It's amazing. It's like watching an industry grow.
It's like traditional fundraisers in people that could write your applications or such.
Yeah,
like.
but they were available.
But a long time ago, yeah. But like the trusts and foundations that people knew how to, where to find, and had that knowledge and that resource.
And Anne Rupert's remember our campaign, which is brilliant, and I think that's her as well.
I think what you're picking up on is really important. It's about how you don't feel isolated and knowing about these things. And actually it's events like this where you can have those conversations with people, and the resources that Last Year really put out and also Indiegogo is that from here it is email addresses, it is contacts, it's you know, it's that's what we've got to think about.
And I was just going to say that, you know, I think if we were going to do it again, I guess there'd be certain areas that you probably have to research again, and especially as to what you're doing. But I think kind of those basic tools are there, and a lot of those aren't probably going to change instantly.
We have a 24-hour tech support, so we have something called the Happiness Team. And I also used with a straight face one day. But they are 24 hours tech support, so also if you're going into it thinking, you know, you just send an email going, I feel that my image is frozen on my perk and something, and they get back to you immediately and troubleshoot the payment problems.
We have another question at the back.
Yeah, I just wondered if you have any kind of statistics on demographics for Indiegogo in particular, but for crowdfunding websites, because some content that I work with is for a slightly older speed audience, so I just wondered, trying to access that kind of audience.
Yeah, well, there's a great figure about women, and I can't remember it, so I know when we're being filmed, but Danae Ringelman, who's our founder, is really awesome, and she's a female entrepreneur awardee in Silicon Valley, and there's a wonderful statistic about women businesses and campaigns run by women and what that percentage is. But onto the everyday demographic, I think with anything online, you know, it's the same if you're setting up a VOD platform, who's going to come to it. It's you know, the really active lot are the 18 to 35-year-olds, and then above that it slows down a bit. But I think that age gap is getting less and less, isn't it? I think that it used to be like 18 to 24-year-olds, and now I think the 35-year-olds are nearly as active as Hugh probably knows more about this. But you do always look at that internet age group, don't you? The online, but it can still work. But it's working about how, if you have an older demographic, it's about how to get offline online, and that might be a 3 months preparation for your campaign on a Facebook page, and it's how you find those people. And it's a bit tougher, and it's and then when you go out for PR, it's the same thing that we kind of say to people: don't spend a fortune on traditional PR, because Facebook ads work absolutely brilliantly. You know, they're not expensive, they're £100, and you could be ticking 50-year-olds in the South Coast. You can get really down and dirty with Facebook ads, and I think that is much better money spent than trying to get yourself an article in The Guardian, where I think then you might have a 50-year-old who goes, lovely, that's great, but they you know, getting them then to turn on a computer to copy the link, and you know, and that's why one of the best ones is somebody big tweets it, and they've tweeted the link, because if you're walking around, you're like, oh, Stephen Frizz is talking about and this has happened. We've had this doc that got about £10,000 with a Katie Moran tweet, but it's just you know, you're on the Twitter, you've got the link, press the link, the Indiegogo page comes up. Press the link, details, PayPal, you know, it's that 4 clicks and you're through.
I spotted your hand up.
Yeah.
Did you?
What advice would what advice would you give for copywriting and trademarking your idea before crowdfunding? And are there examples of people stealing each other's ideas that have been crowdfunded?
I don't know really. I mean, I think in film it's just that you should take it as being in a pitch forum, I guess. And you know, there is that thing in film, you know, you could have this amazing story, but you can put that story onto screen, and if it was yours originally, you know. I've had a couple of people that have had big revelations in their films. So the Russian Woodpecker that just won Sundance, they were going to crowdfund with us, but in the documentary that won Sundance, they reveal a massive secret that the world doesn't know about. They knew it was going to be revealed at their first premiere at Sundance, and we couldn't find a way of doing a campaign without revealing that secret. So I know that's slightly different, but that's the difficult area with docs that are exposés, because you kind of need to be clean about what your film's about in order for people to fund it.
Yeah, I'm probably the wrong person to ask, but I just say, you know, give it away. Don't hold on to your ideas. So I ran a workshop in the Emirates at the end of last year for a load of especially hand-picked people who were quite young. They were kind of late teens to mid-20s, and they were writers, film directors, photographers, all sorts. And it's really interesting because culture's quite new in the Emirates. It's only been around, the country's been around for 42 years, which is just bizarre. And they don't really have that much culture. And these people that were gathered in front of me were hand-picked because they were going to kind of start producing the culture, which was going to go on for years and years. And the very first question I asked them was the challenges. Please tell me the challenges that you faced. And I asked them, went around the table, and the first writer that I came to, he was like, you know, I'm really scared about my stuff getting stolen. I never like to show anyone my work, and I never like to tell anyone my ideas because it'll get stolen. So I thought, okay, just leave that one for a minute. We kept going around the table, and virtually sat opposite him on the other side of this table was this young girl. She was like, I'm a writer, and about 2 months ago I decided to blog. It's the very first time I've ever blogged, and I started putting my work up there. And you know, at the weekend, someone from America got in touch with me because they liked my work. And then just this morning, someone from Australia, and all of a sudden I've got these fans all over the world that liked my work. And it was just, you know, people's fear of their ideas getting stolen is so irrational sometimes, because your idea is your idea and your interpretation of how you're going to tell that story. And no one else can steal your interpretation. You can steal some of the nuts and bolts, but they're never going to be able to steal, you know, the whole idea. I used to be a DJ for many years, and all those DJs have virtually the same access to the same records, but the good ones are the ones who put those sets together in the way that they thought was best.
That's such a good comparison.
You'll do it your way brilliantly, so don't worry about other people doing it badly.
Yeah. No, I was going to say similar thing really. I think put it out there. I think people aren't going to do the exact same thing. It's good if it inspires someone, and that's not a bad thing. It's just pushing things forward in a way.
And the question I always get asked is, but how can we make money if you know, we give our work away? Behind me, I always have a picture of Banksy, who spent years and years and years giving his work away, and sells work for millions.
And on that note, I think it's time to say the word beer. So I hear you have one beer each. So technically that is the... but thank you so much. I think it's been a really brilliant and hopefully a conversation that's been really useful to everyone. And big thanks to Andrew, big thanks to Lighthouse. And let's go drink some beer.